Have you ever been stuck in a situation at work where every single option just feels wrong? You know that feeling, right? That gut-wrenching moment where the company's bottom line is pulling you one way and your own moral compass is pointing in the complete opposite direction? It's a total ethical minefield. And trying to walk through it without a map? It's paralyzing. So today, let's build that map together. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with a really high-stakes dilemma that, frankly, any of us could face. Then we'll get our bearings with a 7-step compass for conflict. We'll look at the problem through 2 totally different ethical lenses, see how a leader's style can completely change the outcome, and then we'll talk about the ultimate accountability tool. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by packing a personal toolkit you can start using pretty much immediately. You know, when you boil it all down, so many of these tough workplace conflicts come back to one thing, that constant tug of war between the pressure to make a profit and that little voice inside that just wants to do the right thing. It's a classic for a reason, and it's where most of us get completely stuck. Okay, let's make this super real. Imagine this lands on your desk. Your company's had a massive data breach. You've got 2 choices. Option 1, a full, expensive, top-to-bottom fix. It's going to protect every single user, but it will absolutely destroy this quarter's profits. Option 2, a cheap, quick patch. It gets the system back online fast, but you know deep down it leaves your users exposed. The pressure's on. What's the call? It's a really tough spot, isn't it? I mean, that feeling of being pulled in 2 directions at once is exactly why we need a framework. This isn't about some magic formula that spits out the right answer. It's about having a clear, logical process to help you find an answer you can stand behind. And this is it. This is your compass. It's a simple 7-step process. First, you just state what the ethical problem actually is. Second, you gather the facts, just the cold, hard data, no stories. Third, figure out who this decision affects, every single stakeholder. Fourth, you brainstorm your different options. Fifth, and this is a big one, you apply some core ethical principles, which we'll get to in a sec. Sixth, you make the decision. And finally, number 7, and this is so important, you look back and you learn from it for next time. Okay, so that 5th step, applying ethical principles, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because the right answer can completely change depending on the philosophical lens you're looking through. Let's check out the 2 big ones. So on one side, you've got utilitarianism. The easiest way to think about this is like ethical math. It's all about the final outcome. You pick the action that creates the most good for the most people. But on the other side, you've got deontology. This one's all about duty and rules. It says that some things are just right or wrong, period, no matter what happens as a result. You follow the moral code, end of story. This example just nails the difference. The utilitarian leader does the math. Laying off 100 people to save 1,000 jobs, that's a net positive. The greatest good is served. But the deontological leader says absolutely not. Their duty is to each person, and they believe it's fundamentally wrong to use people as a pawn in a bigger game. The action itself is wrong. See? Same problem, 2 totally different conclusions. So having a framework and understanding these theories, that's huge, but it all really depends on who is making the call. A leader's core style is going to dramatically change how they tackle an ethical problem. Let's look at 2 classic types. First, the servant leader. Their number 1 priority is to serve their team, their followers, and their community. It's all about empathy. Then you have the transactional leader. They operate on a pretty simple system of exchange. You do a good job, you get a reward. You mess up, there's a consequence. It's all about hitting targets. Okay, let's jump back to our data breach. How would these 2 leaders handle it? Well, the servant leader would almost certainly focus on their duty to the user community. Protecting those people is their top priority, even if it costs a lot. The transactional leader, though, they might see it through a different lens. They're probably going to run a cost-benefit analysis, weighing the cost of the fix against potential fines or bad press, and making a call based on that calculation. But what happens when leadership makes the wrong call? You know, when all the internal checks and balances fail, and a really bad decision gets pushed through. That's when we need the ultimate accountability engine to kick in, whistleblowing. Just think about the sheer weight of this dilemma for a second. It perfectly captures that intense internal battle. You've got this loyalty to your coworkers and your company pulling you one way, and then your duty to the public or just your own conscience, yanking you in the complete opposite direction. You know, the most ethical companies don't fear this. They build a culture that actually encourages people to speak up. They create safe, totally anonymous ways to report problems. They offer ironclad protection so you can't be punished for doing the right thing. And they guarantee that when someone does find the courage to step forward, their claim is taken seriously and investigated fairly. All right, so we've covered frameworks, theories, leadership, and culture. That's a lot of big picture stuff. But what can you do right now as an individual? Let's build your own personal toolkit so you can stand your ground when you find yourself in that ethical minefield. First things first, start by defining your own personal code of conduct. Break it down into these 3 areas. Socially, what's your responsibility to the wider world? Legally, what are the laws you will always follow, no matter what? And professionally, what are the standards of integrity you're going to hold yourself to? Just writing this down for yourself creates this incredibly powerful personal anchor. Next, you have to learn to spot the warning signs of something called ethical fading. That's a fancy term for when the moral side of a decision just starts to disappear from the conversation. So if you're in a meeting and the talk is only about money or metrics, if anyone who brings up ethics is dismissed as being soft, or if there's just this insane pressure to win at all costs, those are giant red flags. That's your cue to stop the conversation and bring the ethics back into it. And finally, we have to remember that ethics goes way beyond just people and profits. Especially for those of us in IT, we have a real duty to the planet. This means actively pushing for things like green computing, making sure e-waste is recycled responsibly, and choosing hardware from sustainable sources. This is a huge part of being a modern ethical professional. So here's the bottom line. Having a framework, understanding the theories, building a toolkit, all of that stuff is designed to give you clarity. But clarity is not the same thing as courage. When that moment arrives, when the pressure is really on, the final question isn't about what you know. It's about what you're willing to do. Do you have the courage to follow through?